Gearheads know that some projects need so many parts, it feels like you need a whole storage unit just to store them. That's what eBay Motors' 122 million parts are for. Think of it as your virtual parts garage. They've always got the right fitment at the right prices. Use the eBay Motors app or visit ebaymotors.com. Let's ride.
Holidays are here, and so is fashionable fitness. Gift yourself a Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 3 5G, a phone that folds in half to literally stand on its own. Pair it with the Galaxy Watch 4 for ultimate wellness and wow factor. Check health stats, flex personal records. Over 90 activities can be tracked, like biking, swimming, golfing, and more. Invest in yourself with tech made to crush goals. Holidays open up with Galaxy. Shop it all at Samsung.com. 5G connection and availability may vary. Check with carrier. Products sold separately.
Hey everyone, this is the Almost World Podcast. Bringing to you mind-blowing interviews with guests from all over the world. So settle down, relax, and enjoy the show. Oh yeah, by the way, if you like the podcast, please support Elmo's World Podcast on Patreon. Your support is what helps the podcast improve more and more. 3. Okay. Welcome to Elmo's World Podcast. This is Elmo Der Jr., your host, and I am with my awesome friend, Kevin Francis. Kevin, can you introduce yourself?
Elmo, it's a pleasure having you. And, you know, your show must be doing really, really, really good because you kept, like, the bottom of the barrel guest for last at this point. So you must have had over good guests before. So thank you so much for thinking of the little guy like myself.
No, dude, you're not a little guy. Yeah.
Well, as you said, my name is Kevin Francis. I am the main host of the podcast called Left of the Valley, broadcasting out of the beautiful British Columbia in Canada. It's a show, make sure everybody gets a fair share. So most of the time we have a radio-based interview style show program, and we usually interview either a podcaster, a scientist, or an author. You know, we try to bring positive messages into the world, debunking myths and stuff like that.
Yeah, dude, can I request something? Like, can we stop video because the internet in my country is okay. Cool. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, Kevin, I have fallen in love with your show, and I'm like looking forward to the relaunch that you mentioned, and I just want to ask then. Why are you an atheist?
Well, that's a good question indeed, isn't it? Why is somebody an atheist? I guess probably the major answer to that is contrary to what maybe some theists will think. So, I'm not an atheist because I'm angry at God. I'm not an atheist because I'm a nihilist or anything like that. I'm an atheist because I'm intellectually honest. How I became an atheist, I mean, we're all born atheists, and then we're taught as kids. I was taught into the Roman Catholic faith as a child. And for the longest time, my mom thought I was actually going to become a priest. We actually had arguments about that because she's still a good Catholic woman and feels full of guilt and everything, like all the time. And she would say, how come you know so much about the Bible? I know more about her Bible than she does herself. And I told her, I said, Mom, as a child, you told me that when I was going to die, there was going to be a test. And it was going to be a test whether I go into a nice place or if I fail the test, I end up suffering for eternity in a lake of flames and stuff like that. And you told me the answers were in this book, and I was pointing at the Bible. So I studied for the test. And when I studied for the test, I realized that the test was not making any sense. The questions weren't making any sense. And then by the time I was in my early teens, and you know how your mom drags you to church every Sunday? You know that feeling? She makes you put on your horrible clothes that you don't like. You got a big sweater that you don't like to wear, and you're waking up in the morning. You don't want to go there. You don't want to be there. And I remember distinctly one day I was in church, and if you've ever been into a Catholic church, it's boring as hell. And you're sitting, you're standing. There's a chant. You're kneeling at some point, and you're standing again. There's a chant. And I was looking around as a young man, a very young man. I was like maybe 13. And something struck me so suddenly was all the roboticness. It was so robotic. to hear the people chant. There was no passion in their voice. It was just so automatic. It was like mumbling something. There was no life in that church. And I realized at that moment, I just had that eureka moment, and I thought, nobody believes this crap. Nobody believes this. They're just here out of social convention. They're here out of fear. They're here because that's what they're told to do. And that's pretty much the start of my journey towards atheism. And then at that point, I started really taking I read the Bible again for a second time, which, by the way, it's a horrible read. I don't recommend it. And it just confirmed more and more what I was doing. At that point, my atheistic, I wasn't quite an atheist yet. I kind of felt that there had to be an answer to the questions, and I was thinking more like a force in the universe or something like that, a guiding hand of some kind, but not Jesus or anything like that. And so hold on a sec. I'll get some moderation here to pop in. Yeah, and at some point towards my 18th birthday, I realized, I was actually meditating under a tree for my 18th birthday. I know how much of a party animal am I? And all of a sudden I had this vision, for lack of a better word, of this old dusty Bible that just broke like shattered like glass. And as I opened my eyes, I realized I don't believe any of this. And I said, oh my God, I don't metaphorically speaking, of course, I don't believe any of this crap. And that's how I really became an atheist, a non-believer. But I only became very active in the atheistic world because, like I'm 46 now, so it was only like maybe about a decade ago. What I was doing was always, my mother always thought of me as somebody who wanted to save the world, and that's kind of true actually. So what I did is I was doing these documentary viewings. I was picking a documentary and I was showing it to the public for free, and I would invite a special guest to talk about the subject. Whether or not it was true, whether it was fake news, whether that kind of stuff. And there was this one documentary that was a Canadian documentary that was made by the author Joel Backen. It was called The Corporation, and it was a very famous Canadian documentary. It was based on a book. Under the law, a corporation is seen as a legal person. So Joel Backen, being a professor, basically decided to psychoanalyze what kind of person, if a corporation was a person, what kind of person would it be? And the conclusion was that corporations are psychopaths, and they always seem to be behind problems that we have in our society. So after doing these documentaries and seeing like that, I decided to dig a bit deeper into corporations and why is it that we feel that corporations have the right to do whatever they do. And I came to a certain conclusion that a lot of these corporations are built on Christian values. And in the Christian Bible, there was this one line in Genesis that basically where God basically comes in and basically gives dominion to mankind over the rest of the world. And that clicked again and said, oh my God, this is it. This is why we feel as a species that we have the right to trash the place, that we have the right to do whatever we want, that we are, quote, the masters of this world. And that really clashed with part of my worldview, because I always thought that as a species, we should be the janitors of this world, not the masters of it. We're the only species that can actually take care and foresee what's going to happen to it, and not necessarily rule with an iron fist. So that got me into viewing even more what was going on with religion, and especially Christianity. And then I stumbled upon things like the wonderful Christopher Hitchens and his videos on YouTube, and that just opened the floodgates to the whole atheist community. Richard Dawkins, and then into Seth Andrews, and all that. And at some point, I was listening to some of these atheist podcasts, and I thought some of them were absolutely horrible. And I thought, oh my God, I can do a better show than this. Well, it turns out I can't. But the point is, we tried. So we said, okay, let's do a show. Let's do a Left of the Valley, and let's see if we can get, more traction going into our community. Although I gotta admit, where I am in Canada, we don't face anywhere the level of theism that you'll face in the United States or even in the Philippines, for that matter. So there is a battle up here, but it's nowhere near as powerful of an enemy. A lot of for the most part, Canada is much more secular than the America, for example. And that's a very interesting things we do on the show. We have a tendency to compare Canada and the U.S. because most of our audience is actually Canadian or American. Yeah, so that's how Left of the Valley started, and we've been doing this for 6 years. We had to go on kind of hiatus for a while because of COVID-19, of course, and because one of our co-hosts, Nancy, who's been with us for 5 years, she was the senior, and she basically passed away. So she passed away in June. So, but now we are ramping up to start another version of Left of the Valley 2.0. It's going to be me again, but it's going to be a different co-host. But we'll be back very soon on the air. So that was in a nutshell.
Yeah, but it seems that your atheism is mainly based on counter arguments against Christianity, right? Nothing about Islam or Hinduism or other religions.
I think the arguments are the same. Of course, it was faced mainly against Christianity simply because of the geographic location where I am. Had all these things happened to me if I was living in Saudi Arabia, I'm sure my arguments would be mostly against Islam. But these arguments that go against Christianity translate the same way against Islam or against anything because even though religion is almost universal on the planet, the arguments for religion are also universal, and they're also universally bad. They're bad arguments. Now, I'll quote the late, great Christopher Hitchens with that, saying, I don't really falter or hate religion because it was our first attempt at explaining the world we live in. And for that we have to give it to religion. Well, it was our first attempt to try to explain the world we live in as a primate coming out and trying to understand why the world is doing this and why the volcanoes are doing this. And that's how religion started, Why is this volcano coming? Why is this mountain spitting fire and killing our people? Well, we must have done something wrong. Oh, yeah, well, this guy comes in and says, yeah, man, there's this god, this angry god underneath the mountain, and, we have to appease him somehow so we can keep on planting our crops. Yeah, what's going to happen? I don't know. Let's give him something important. What do we have that's important? Well, the most important thing we have is our lives, so how about we sacrifice someone? That's how religion started. It's just as a stupid explanation to explain why natural phenomena were happening. But we are in the 21st century. We have science now. We have better explanations. We don't have the answer to everything, but we have much better explanations. We can put religion where it belongs in the past. Leave it there. No, don't go against it in that sense that, it was a part of our history and acknowledge that it was a part of our history, but we have better answers. Could you imagine? I mean, today, take Christianity and Islam. They're essentially based on Bronze Age beliefs. I mean, could you imagine any other Bronze Age belief that you would have today? Bronze Age belief, let's say some Bronze Age belief. Bronze Age belief would be like, you believed at the time that there were sea monsters. Those were like a legitimate threat at sea. Sea monsters, that was legitimate. You believed the earth was flat. Okay, that was a legitimate belief. You believed that spitting on a wound would cure it. Now, could you imagine doing that today? Going to your doctor, you start spitting on your cut to cure it. Could you imagine saying, oh, well, I got to take insurance because I've got I'm going on a cruise and it might be sea monsters. I better take insurance for that. That'd be ridiculous. So why all these Bronze Age beliefs are ridiculous? Because we know that there are no sea monsters, but religion, we hold on to it. And
yeah, can I ask you, what specific Bronze Age beliefs are in the Quran?
The Quran? Well, the whole concept of how the Earth started is Bronze Age.
Well, a lot of Muslims believe in evolution now.
Oh yeah, of course, and so a lot of Catholics, right? Although there's a lot of Christians that don't. But
so what Bronze Age beliefs does it come from the Quran?
What's that?
What Bronze Age beliefs come from the Quran?
Well, just the idea there's an anthropomorphic deity to begin with is a Bronze Age belief, right? That somehow there's a person and he's shaped like a man, or he's like somehow decides that your sexuality is somehow important to him. He created a universe, out of what? It's not even magic. It's what, technology? We don't even know. Right there, just the belief of a all-powerful guiding force is a Bronze Age belief.
Okay, are there except for the theism then? What Bronze Age beliefs are in the Quran as well?
Well, I have to go deeper into the what the Quran sees. For example, the Bronze Age belief of how people come to be created is Bronze Age belief, right? I mean, they don't have.
Yeah, but they were like the Quran believes in evolution or naturalistic events like the Big Bang.
Yes. Well,
So
I don't
what Bronze Age beliefs do they have?
you got to be careful with that. I don't think the Quran basically says there was a Big Bang. I think what you have here is a modern interpretation in light of the science as to what the Quran says, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure 500 years ago you had said the Big Bang to somebody, to an Islamic scholar, he would have basically laughed at you, right? This is what religion does. When science comes in and proves a point, religion kind of backtracks and retrofits into its own scriptures. Oh yeah, of course, this is exactly what Allah meant at the time, because we have and this is how they keep supporting the Quran or the Bible for that matter, right? For example, they used to say that they say the earth in Christianity would say the earth was flat. No. Then when science said no, the earth is a sphere, then Christians came out and said, yeah, that's exactly what God said, because he says right here, earth is a circle. See, you're basically 500 years ago, you're telling me that the earth is flat, but now when we prove to you the earth is a sphere, you find a way to interpret that into your book. And it's not just Christianity does that. Islam is great at doing that. Islam is even a freaking bureau that basically people are dedicated to doing just that. And that's every religion. They just want to hold on to this, to their faith, because it's hard to go. How do you go to people and politely tell them that your entire worldview you base your life on is wrong? It's a hard pill to swallow. And this is why atheism gets so much hatred from religious groups, because it's really a hard pill to swallow.
Okay, so I want to ask you, like for example, let's throw away the Bibles or scripture or the cultures that religions have, and let's just say someone who is a theist, right? Who believes that there is a God out there, but doesn't have any religion. How would you disprove his theism?
Well, you don't disprove the theism. First of all, he's making the claim that there is something out there. It's his burden. He has to prove there is. I mean, don't get me wrong. As an atheist, I'm going to say this right now, okay? I don't think there is a God out there. I can't prove there isn't, right? Like, I can't prove there isn't Thor out there. I can't prove there isn't Wotan out there, or Odin, or Zeus, or Allah. I can't prove there isn't a person out there. But right now, from what we know, there is no reason to believe there is. And especially when it comes to the Abrahamic God, there really, if there is a character like Allah or Jesus or whatever, he or she is exactly as the Bible or the Quran describes them, then there is a very, very low probability of this person.
Yeah, I agree. Like, let's assume that we're not talking about Abrahamic religions. Let's just say someone who's a deist who believes that there's a God out there. How would you? How would you say that? Tell him that I think there's no God. Why do you think that?
I wouldn't say that. The first question I would ask him is, say, okay, well, why do you think that? How do you come to the conclusion that there is a God? And of course,
well, I could give a lot of arguments for theists.
Yes, of course, but there's usually arguments from ignorance. Right? The same way that 500 years ago,
well, not really. The for example, there are a lot of philosophical arguments for theism, like for example, the Kalam cosmological argument.
But the thing is, you see, you shouldn't need to take refuge into philosophy or philosophical argument to prove your deity. It should be very apparent. Right? If there is one religion, if there is one God out there, why are we all disputing ourselves about all these other religions? It should be incredibly obvious, right? It should be incredibly obvious that there is a God out there doing things, especially if he or she is interacting with us. But the thing is
well, that's a should statement. But for example, if I was a God, who would tell me what I would want to do? So if for example, if you set a standard that this is what God should be, or this is what God should do, but the fact is that you're not the one setting standards for God.
No, I'm not setting the standard. They are setting the standards. right? They are the ones telling me that their God is all loving, or their God is this, and their God is that. Okay, well,
Yeah, but we're not talking about the Abrahamic
100%
religions. We're just talking
could
about.
be any God, right? Could be any God. For example, we could be talking about Thor. Oh, Thor protects us from this, or Thor protects us from that. Well, really? I mean, I don't see.
Well, no, not a specific God, just someone who believes that there might be a God out there, not anyone in specific.
Oh, and
So
you know what? That's I to be superbly honest with this, that could be entirely possible. I think it's very improbable, but it's entirely possible. If I have to be intellectually honest, I have to admit there is a slim chance that I could be wrong on this, and there could actually be some kind of divine force out there. Yeah, absolutely.
okay, so in a way that you don't really think that there's no God out there, but that there might be a slim chance that there.
How do I word this? For everything that we observe at this point points to me to the idea that there isn't anything out there. Now, if somebody was to come to me with definitive proof that there is something out there, then my beliefs would change. I would say, okay, there is something out there. There is like a force or whatever you want to describe it as. Okay, and we have evidence to believe so. And that is essentially the intellectually honest position to take. So at that point, I wouldn't. If for example, I don't know, there's a God X, and there's ample sufficient hard to refute proof about this character out there, then I would stop being an atheist. I would say, okay, so it seems that from what we can understand, there is this character out there, and okay, now what does he or she want? That would be my position. I would stop being an atheist. I would believe in the person. I would not necessarily become a worshiper, but at least I would understand that there is something out there. But at this point, where we stand right now, there is nothing that basically proves to me that there is.
Okay, but what would be definitive proof for you to believe in a God?
Well, those are good questions. I mean, I could ask for something like absolutely extraordinary, like depending on the characters of a god, right? First of all, just his assuming that we're talking about a anthropomorphic, intellectually open and capable of communicating with us.
Okay.
That would happen. If there'd be some kind of communication, some kind of something. Okay, that'd be something to begin with. If for example we're talking about, are we still talking about like a theistic kind of nebulous God here, or are we talking about something more specific?
Yeah. Okay. Any God that you would argue for.
Let's talk, for example, about the Abrahamic God, right?
Okay.
The Abrahamic God, for example, is characterized very specifically, right? He's characterized as omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent, right? So if this character, this God, was to exist, I don't need to know what kind of evidence I would need to believe in him, because he would know, right? Allah would know what he needs to do to make me believe, because he's everywhere and he knows everything. So he knows what I need for evidence, right? So he knows what everybody needs to believe in him, right? So it would be very easy, and especially he's all powerful, it'd be very easy for him to, I don't know, pull back the veil of the sky and say, hey guys, it's Allah here. You guys need to stop fighting you need to stop killing yourselves. By the way, Islam is the true religion, and you need to listen to Muhammad. That's all he needs to do. And atheism would just die right there. There'd be no more atheists. There'd be no more religious wars. There'd be no more killing in the name of God. It would just happen. And if there is a God out there, especially one that's described as loving, compassionate, and cares about us, it would have been done already. But it hasn't. It hasn't. So either it comes to two conclusions at that point. Either that God that you describe as all passionate, all powerful is just not there, or it's something else entirely. So it's just being intellectually honest. I mean, if Allah and Muhammad were to walk in my door tomorrow morning and say, "Hey, Kev, by the way, you need to stop doing the atheist show, and this is what you need to do, and you need to pray towards Mecca, and et cetera, et cetera," I would say, "Okay, cool. Sorry, my bad. I was wrong." That's all there is to it. It's not because I'm angry at them. It's not because I'm a nihilist. It's not because I believe I'm the god or whatever. No, no, no. It's just I'm just being intellectually honest here.
So in a way that in your intellectual honesty brings you to not believe in the Christian or Abrahamic God.
Well, all gods really. You gotta remember one thing: atheism is not a worldview. Okay, I know it's hard to believe for a lot of theists, but it's not a worldview. Atheism is just one answer to one specific question. That's it. I am, after all, my worldview, I'm a humanist. The way I think, I'm a skeptic. And as a skeptic, I've come to atheism as my conclusion on the one question of, is there a God? That is it. That is the answer. So if skeptically I was to evaluate different information and different evidence, and I would come to a different conclusion and say, okay, you know what? I'm no longer an atheist. I have sufficient proof to convince me there is a God. Then I would become a theist.
Yeah. So for example, if aside from your arguments against the Abrahamic God, what are the other arguments do you have for the non-Abrahamic God?
You'll have to be a bit more specific for that question, because
okay.
The non-Abrahamic.
Yeah. For example, just let's say the ultimate cause of the universe, that God.
Okay. The answer is quite simple, and I know it's a hard answer for a lot of people to understand. But it's the answer is we don't know. That's all there is to it. We don't know yet. We don't know yet, right? Because when people say, "Well, it had to be God to create the universe," these are the same people that 1,000 years ago would say, "Well, of course it has to be Zeus for lightning. How else do you explain lightning, right? How do you explain lightning if it's not for Zeus?" Well, that's the same thing with the universe. How do you explain the universe and the Big Bang if not for God? It's because we don't know, and that's an honest answer. And it's
yeah.
Not,
so you're referring to the God of gaps theory that the people use.
Yes, absolutely. Because as a species, we prefer a bad answer to a non-answer. It sucks, but it's true. That's how we are as a species. We like to have an answer even if it's the wrong one. We prefer that to not having an answer. Unfortunately, it's not intellectually honest. The reality is, we don't know. We don't know yet. We have some clues. We have some hypotheses about how it happened. We don't know exactly how abiogenesis happened. We have some theories about it, some hypotheses, I should say. Not theories, but hypotheses.
Okay.
Talk about.
But now that we're talking about theories, what if someone says that, okay, I have a theory that God created the universe? Would that be intellectually dishonest to have a theory?
Well, okay. Well, of course, when you talk theory, and especially when you talk matters of science, you got to remember, if you talk theory as you mean theory as a guess, what you have to say is hypothesis, right? That's what you have. If you have a hypothesis that a God created the universe, that's great. Now you have to set out there and prove it. You have to.
Okay, so when I say theory, like for example, there are tons of studies, tons of philosophical works on it, and we have been always been talking about God. So it seems that it is quite a viable theory.
Well, yeah, but just because we have always been talking about it doesn't necessarily mean we're right all this time, right?
Yeah, exactly. But that goes with science. But it's a theory, right? That doesn't have to mean that it's perfect.
Well, if you mean, like I said, we gotta be careful here, right? If you're taking an educated guess, it's a hypothesis. That's what it is. A scientific theory is something different. Scientific theory is something that's actually been demonstrated to be true. So if you're gonna say I have a theory that a God created the universe, well then you need to show me what the actual proof that you have, because that's what a scientific theory is. If you're saying theory in the sense that the colloquialism that you use every day in English language, what you're basically saying is you have a guess. You have an educated guess, which of course in science term is hypothesis. So we got to be careful with that, especially when you speak in English. That's always a problem.
Okay, so if I say that I have an educated guess that God created the universe, would I be wrong to say that? Would that be intellectually dishonest?
No, it's not wrong. You can actually have that educated guess, that hypothesis. You have a hypothesis, and people do have that hypothesis that there's a outside force, intelligent outside force that created the universe. Okay, now how do you set up to prove it? That's where the rubber meets the road. How do you set out to prove it? And you just say, well, how else do you explain the universe? Well, that's not proof. That's not proof. Okay, that's just debating the semantics. If you say, okay, well, I have X document and I have X measurements measuring this, and I have X, demonstrated things, then you're starting to have something. You're starting to have something akin to a formula, or something akin to some kind of proof. But that's not what they usually use, the God of the gap argument. Well, how else do you explain?
Yeah, okay. But now that we're talking about proofs, what would qualify as a proof for you? For anything, like what would prove something?
What would prove something? Proof is something that you can actually demonstrate and repeat in an experiment, in a controlled experiment, right? For example, we can observe evolution, and we can even reproduce evolution on a very small scale, and we have documented evidence, and we have physical evidence. And you got to remember, even evolution, for example, is a scientific theory, but there might come a time in the future where we might come to a point that we might have to revise evolution. That's unlikely, but it could happen, because scientific theories are always open to how do I put this? They're always open to be perfected, because what improves science is better science, right? Nobody's ever went to a person and said, "Oh, I've disproved the scientific argument with my knowledge of the Bible or the Quran or any other theistic book." That's never happened, right? So if you're gonna work with these with proof, you got to come with something tangible. You got to come with something measurable. You got to come with something that you can actually repeat.
Yeah, but I have a question. Has macroevolution been proven to be systematically and demonstrated to repeat itself?
There's no such thing as macroevolution. There's just evolution. That macroevolution is something that theists came out to distinguish between micro and macro. At first,
yeah, but the question is, have we witnessed it, something that from a species evolving into a different kind of species?
We have,
but we have in terms of like huge family groups.
No, but we have, but
we haven't proven it yet. We haven't seen that process in that scale.
Of course not, because it takes forever for it to happen, right?
Yeah, so in a way that it hasn't been proven yet. Only microevolution has been proven.
Well, like I said, first of all, there is no such thing as micro or macro. There's just evolution, and we have managed to make some small species evolve, like bacteria and even some mosquitoes have actually, and some fruit flies and stuff like that. But the reason we've been able to do that is because these species have very short lifespan, and evolution takes umpteen generations for something like that to happen under constant environment.
Yeah, but but that doesn't mean that also so is the Big Bang. It's like 1 billion years old, but years ago. But to be able to say that something is demonstrably true and repetitive in a process, then for example, you would have to say that you have proven evolution to be a fact, or even the scale for that family of species of animals evolved into another family or a kind. I don't know the taxonomy.
Like I said, it has happened on small organisms.
Yeah, exactly.
It hasn't.
But in order for you to say that it happens in large scales, you would have to demonstrate that, as your standard suggests.
Well, the fossil record demonstrates that, and that's why we rely on that. I mean, we could demonstrate an elephant species evolving to another elephant species, but that would take millions and millions of years, and we've only had 100, somewhat 200, 300 years of science. So it's only because we didn't have the time at this point, nor could we do a study over 1 million years. But the fossil record shows that the hypothesis of evolution was correct, and that's why we rely on it.
Yeah, okay. So I agree with you. That proof doesn't just come from something that is demonstrated, but you can infer from the evidence, like fossil records and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I would argue that the fossil record did demonstrate that evolution happened.
Okay, so then the question is, like, for example, what kind of demonstration is that? Is it empirical? Is it a rational epistemology? Because, for example, if we are to define what proof is, I could prove to you that 1 + 1 = 2, not by empirical evidence, but by other forms of proof.
Oh boy, wow, that's a tough question. And frankly, I don't think I'm actually equipped to actually.
Yeah, okay. But we can change topics, like. I want to ask though, like for example, uh, as a humanist, I think that are you more of a utilitarian or a realist?
What would be your definition of utilitarian?
Utilitarian, the greatest good for the greatest number.
And your definition of realist?
Realist, that there's some objective morality out there, but that doesn't have to infer that there's a God. There's just an
I would be probably more utilitarian at that point. Do I believe there are objective morals? No, I don't. And the reason I don't believe there's objective morals, and of course I know some people will jump in. Oh well, you mean rape is okay in some certain circumstance? No, that's not what I mean. What I do mean is we have to remember that we have a tendency to look at ourselves as individuals, but the human species is a social species to begin with. If, for example, there was another species that was to evolve side by side with us, but a species that did not need to rely on other members of its own tribe to survive. Let's say, for example, tigers. Tigers are solitary. They're solitary creatures. They live by themselves most of the time. They only meet once in a while to reproduce, and that's it. So if a tiger was to evolve into a society, let's put like millions and billions of years, and somehow tigers, under some kind of pressure, manage to become more intelligent and more, but they remain somewhat solitary in their lifestyle. They're not a social species like us. Their morality set would be extremely different from ours. Their values would be also extremely different from ours. You can use the same example for an alien species. Let's take an alien that even from Hollywood. Let's take aliens from the Predators. Remember the Predators from Arnold Schwarzenegger movie? What kind of morality do you think they have? They would have a very different morality than ours. Would you say that they have a morality that's objectively good or bad? You can't apply that. You can't apply objective because the morality applies to their species. And they are like this. So we do think that murder and rape and these bad things that we think is bad are objective because it applies objectively to the species. But it's not an objective thing when you compare to the rest of the animal kingdom. A predator, for example, let's keep that Hollywood thing going on there, doesn't seem to have any problem with killing another one of its species because it seems to be much more of a solitary animal than human. It seems to be much more of a loner than humans. Humans need each other to survive. So we understand full well that killing a member of your own tribe just weakens the tribe as a whole. We understand that. That's why we say that murder is bad. And this is why we have a tendency to think of it as objective morality. But the reality is it's subjective to the species as compared to the rest of the animal kingdom.
Do you think that's how humans think right now? That, for example, oh, my father died. Oh, that's a waste for the society.
No.
Is that
people are much more self-centered than that. But it doesn't change the aspect that humanity as a whole is a social species, right? But there are some things that we do evolve, for lack of a better term, on our things. For example, let's say for example somebody showed up at let's say your brother showed up at your front door 500 years ago, and he's got the head of some of his enemies that he just decapitated. And he would say, "Can you help me? Can you help me hide the body?" Yeah, chances are you probably would. But today, if your brother showed that to you tomorrow morning, chances are you would say, "Dude, you got to give yourself in. You got to call the police. You got to give yourself up. You got to face the music." Why is that sudden change there? Why? It's because we understand much more today, for the good of the species, what we need to do, even if it's somebody that's very close to your family. We have a different sense of morality. So essentially, our moral judgments has evolved as well, for lack of a better term, into what it is today.
For example, so let's say that, for example, it's just I grew up in a desert alone, right? And I found another person who also grew up in a desert alone, and will my morality be based on society? Yeah, so but it would be like shaped by the environment, I guess.
Well, It would. It would be, at that point, your morality would be based on pretty much like the tiger, survival of you and only you, right? Because, and then of course, the thing is you were raised by the desert by yourself. You would have no knowledge of what humanity is. You would have no knowledge of what society is either. If you understand what society is, and if you understand the history of how we came to be and how we got to where we are, I mean, everything that we have right now, including the computer you and I are talking on right now, we didn't build this. I didn't build a computer, neither did you. We're using it because we're just resting on the shoulders of giants. This collective knowledge, and it's probably one of the greatest gifts humanity has, is being passed on from generation to generation, and it's a secret to our success. If we were a very individualistic and a different kind of solitary species, we would not have this kind of technology. It's only because we're a social species and we can share this knowledge, and we can have a collective memory and retain this and pass it on to generation that we're able to rise above simply being a primate in the plains. It's just because we're a social species, and this, of course, has as well affected our moral landscape.
So, when you, for example, say that there are no objective morals and everything is in a way utilitarian,
Well,
so, for example,
I gotta say that's only my point of view. I could be wrong, right? I could be wrong, but from what I see, from where I stand, I'm no expert on the subject. I'm just a schmo. Right, but from what I see and from what life tells me and what I've observed and what when I talk to philosophers and all that, seems to me, in my opinion, that it doesn't seem to be an objective morality.
Yeah. So, for example, when you talk about there's no objective morality, then, for example, I assume that you have your own subjective morality that determines your life choices, right?
Yeah, let's be more specific again here. When I say there is no objective morality, there is no objective morality as far as the universal scale is. There is an objective morality as far as the species is concerned, right? We kind of all agree that killing is not good, right? So we can see that as objective. But is it objective to the point of it applies universally? Probably not. So if you ask me if I have subjective morality myself, I guess I do. I have subjective morality as far as I'm concerned, as long as my moral judgment or my moral decision doesn't affect other people around me, right? Like my father would say, your ends right where the rights of others begin. I could be very selfish about myself. But when it gets to a point where my selfishness starts to affect other people around you, then eventually you have to correct the course, or otherwise you kind of shun from society in a way.
Yeah, and I'm really curious though. For example, because you earlier said that there's an objective morality for society, but not for the universe, but you also have a subjective morality for yourself that is separate from society.
Yeah, I think as a whole, everybody kind of looks out for number one first, right? We always try to I always try to do what's best for me, of course, at first, and everybody is like that too. I think there is and this is where philosophy becomes a bit nebulous. There is a bit of a breaking point though, where sometimes altruism comes in, and then we have to start thinking about doing what's best for the whole, right? I mean, would you take a bullet for your child? Of course you would. Of course you would. Well, even though you have subjective morality most of the time for yourself, you try to do what's best for yourself. You try to pick your place where you want to eat or whatever. But there is a point where you shut that aside, and then you go for the greater good. Especially when it comes to like family members or something like that, or even sometimes for the whole of society.
Okay, so for example, I want to know like what does being a humanist mean to you? What is it?
Humanist is basically pro-human, really. There's not much to it. I think it's
pro-human. For example, if I were a psychopath and my humanity is to kill children. Would you be pro-human?
Well, yeah, yes and no. I mean, would I lock you up? Yes, but I think one of the things also it's one of the interesting aspects of our society. You take for example Canada and the U.S. Canada has a rehabilitation system when it comes to something like that. As the U.S., for example, they have more of a penal system when it comes to their jail system, right? So, I would try to understand. As, for example, Elmo's a psychopath also, and he just hung up with me and became a psychopath. He went on a killing spree. I think, and once you're captured, it's easy to just pull a bullet in your head and be done with it. But I also think that Elmo has some value. So maybe, if we can't cure him, at least maybe we can study him enough to understand to prevent the next Elmo, right? And I think that's a pro-human thing to do.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you mean by pro-human? What is that?
For helping
helping
the species as a whole.
So you're racist, I guess. The human race, pro-human race.
Yeah. Well, you gotta be careful with those words too.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I totally understand, and I understand what you mean, because there is, first of all, I find it funny when people are racist, because there's no such thing as a race. The Human Genome Project in 2011 distinctly proved there's only one race right now of humans. There was more than one race, but right now there's.
What I meant by racist is that like you're pro-human race.
I want to do what's best for humanity and the human race, and even if means going against your own self.
So what is the best for the human race? What is the ideal human race society?
Oh boy, that's a good question.
Because, like, for example, you propose a direction towards the best for the human race, but where does that best lead to? What is that best?
Yeah, I think that becomes a very good question, and it kind of brings us full circle in a way too. What's best for the human race is when I said earlier that we had a tendency to, when the Christian God, for example, in the Bible says that humanity has dominion over all the other creatures. I think that was a mistake. I think we need to realize as a species that we were never meant to be the masters of this world. We were just meant to be the caretakers of it. And I think that is the best for the species. When we are at our best, when humanity is at our best, there are some times in the history when you look at it, it's when we explore. It's when we discover things. It's not when we conquer. It's not when we're masters of things. It's when we explore unknown possibilities. It's when we start answering questions that we've had since the dawn of time. That is when humanity is at its best. And it's not going to go that way if we keep thinking that we're the boss of everything. If you think...
Yeah, okay, but then, so the best for the human race is exploring the universe and treating other animals as equals?
Treating other animals as equals is not exactly what I had in mind. When I say we're supposed to be the caretakers of the universe, it's a bit self-serving, right? We're supposed to. The thing is, we can party on this planet all we want, but if we destroy the planet, we destroy all the other animal species. We destroy ourselves too. So it's self-serving to say we need to take care of the planet because we need to take care of humanity. It's the only place we have, right? Nobody wants to live in a dirty house. You need to clean house, and you need to realize that unfortunately we are symbiotic in some sense to the rest of the web of life. If, for example, we destroy bees, for example, we're going to have a really, really hard time surviving if we destroy bees. But bees, it's...
Yeah, but just to clarify, you're not pro-vegan, right?
No. Do I think that we... No, I mean, part of eating meat is what actually got us to where we are. But I do think there will come a time that they won't be necessary for us to raise animals and butcher them and slaughter them to get a protein injection. We've already got some of the technology that's very promising that can help us overcome that. There won't be I'm thinking in the future there won't be a need for us to start raising cows. We'll be able to actually create meat out of simply reproducing a cellular muscle, essentially. So I think.
So in a few sentences, can you describe what is the ideal or best society for the human race that you proposing?
Boy, that's a good question. The best society. I'm not a seer, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I think
but like, what do you want to happen? Like, what is the best for you?
I hope our society leads somewhere close to what Gene Roddenberry imagined in Star Trek. I hope that our society will head that way. That eventually we'll start heading out. There won't be a need for an economy on this planet, people will start pursuing things not because of wealth and material gain, but the benefit of themselves. Try to become a better person, which was always the intent also of education to begin with. And I hope that eventually we start exploring the unknown possibilities, not necessarily exploring space per se, but exploring what is out there and trying to understand more and more. That's what I'm hoping as a society we strive towards.
So, what makes you think that should be the direction the human race should take?
Well, like I said, the reason I think that is because it seems to me, and then, like I said, it's only my opinion, that's how we've been at our best. At our core, it's when we were the dreamers, it's when we are the explorers that we are at our best. And so why stop there? We've always, every one of us has stood up as a child and looked and said, I wonder what happens, what's over there over the horizon. Every one of us has said that. It's a natural instinct for us to explore.
But it seems to me that the end goal is glory, right? You explore for glory, you conquer other planets or discover stuff for glory.
Not for glory, for knowledge. For knowledge. It's filling the gap, answering the questions. That's what it's for. Of course, people will do it for glory.
So I guess you're saying that the best or ideal society for humanity is where we are all knowing, right? Because that's the ultimate goal, to know everything.
We'll never know everything.
We'll never know, but for example, the best we could do would be to know everything, because information is the goal, right? And the maximum goal is having the maximum information.
No, because having that information is essentially a tool. It's a tool for us to help us survive. The reason we explore medicine is because so we can heal better, so we can live longer. And we can live longer so we can prosper as a society, right? And knowledge is in that sense too. It's not for us to become gods or anything like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It seemed to be where you were kind of heading there with the line.
No, I wasn't. I was looking for what is the ultimate good for you. So you mentioned that longer lives. Is that immortality or just maybe 200 plus 200 plus 300 years?
It's not necessarily an end goal. It's just a natural instinct that we have. We all want to survive as a species. We are an animal species, right? Let's face it. And we all want to survive as a species. We all want to reproduce. We all want to pass on our genes. And that is the best weapon that we have to attain that goal. So it's a very intellectual answer for a very primitive need, if that makes any sense.
Okay. So in a way that your end goal is to follow what evolution told us to do?
Yeah, that's all we can do.
So in a way that you're not free to do what you want because you're following what an accidental event told you to do.
Pretty much, in a sense, yeah. And now we can have a very interesting conversation with Jerry Coyne whether or not we have free will, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? It's mind-boggling when you think about it that way. But
yeah. Anyways, other than I seem to have a good idea of your humanism, and the audience probably loved listening to you talking about Star Trek. And I want to ask you another question because you mentioned free will.
Yeah.
Now this is a good topic. Do you have free will, or do you believe you have free will?
You know what? To be quite honest, I don't know. I really don't know. I really wish I had a better answer for you, but the reality is I don't know. I like the idea of having free will, but the case that Jerry Coyne makes is compelling, and it's beyond my knowledge. So to be intellectually honest, I just don't know.
So how about we rant some bad religions, some really bad made. And I hate some religions, dude. To be honest, this podcast is fair for all, but there are just some that suck.
It sucks so much.
Any ideas?
And the worst part is I don't know how long you've been an atheist, Almo, but it seems.
No, I'm not an atheist, really.
Oh, you're not?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know about you, but for atheists out there, I'll tell you one thing. The longer you are an atheist, the more absurd religion becomes. It just becomes more and more ridiculous. It's like, oh my God. And then I started looking at myself thinking, when I was a kid, I used to course, I was raised a Roman Catholic, so I used to know the Bible very, very well. And it's like, I can't believe all this time I wasted on this stupidity. I feel I'm embarrassed. I'm actually half the time embarrassed. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I couldn't see this earlier. Why did it take me so long to realize this? Right. So anyway, let's wrap on bad religions. Which one do you want to tackle with?
Okay, how about like Jehovah's Witnesses?
Oh,
And I'm just so annoyed because, like, for example, they go to your houses to convert to you, but when you go to their church and like share your own beliefs, they'll kick you out.
yeah.
Right?
I usually Jehovah's. Well, I mean, right now I'm in an apartment building, so they don't come to my door. But when they did, I usually invite them in. I invite them in.
Okay.
You put your Bible
Yeah.
on the floor there. We're just gonna talk man to man. Don't open your book. Let's just talk about what you know and what you think you know. And by the time I'm through with them, they want to leave. So, more
Yeah.
places to go and stuff like that. All right, you go, and I usually never see them back. So, but I feel bad for them. I really do. I understand in their mind any religious, not just the Jehovah's Witnesses. I know they want to help the world and save the world and all that. But the reality is a lot of people never gave it much thought. Religion appeals to emotion. It makes you feel comfortable. And that's the thing.
It does.
Life is not necessarily comfortable. There are some times when it is and it's great, but there's sometimes when you get some harsh truth and you have to just, it knocks you down, but it's about getting back up and facing the music nonetheless. And religion kind of gives you an escape from that. We have a lot of problems in the atheism community, for example, with death, because it's a lot easier for atheists to say, "Oh, he's in a better place now. She's in a better place now. You'll see him again." Gives them hope. We know it's a lie. We know it's not true, but you can't go to somebody who's grieving and say, "Oh, yeah, I'm really sorry about Nancy dying, but you'll never see her again." It sucks, but it's reality. And I think that deep down inside, we all know this on an instinctual level. We all know this. This is why we all grieve and we all cry when somebody dies close to us. If we actually truly, truly believed that you would see this person again, why would you cry for this person's death? You'd be, if you actually truly, truly believed they were in a better place and they were free from harm and they were just waiting for you to join them, why would you be sad? That never made sense to me, right? Why would I be if I truly believe my co-host Nancy just passed away of cancer, right? And it saddens me. I love the fact that I met her in my life. She was one of my best friends, and I miss her terribly. And I know I will never see her again. But if I was to believe as a theist that she's just on a cloud somewhere and playing a harp or something stupid like that, and I'm gonna see her again when my time comes, why would I be sad? I'd be looking forward to it. It's almost like meeting an old friend you haven't seen for 20 years. Like, oh man, I can't wait to see Brian, right? I can't wait to see Brian. I get so many things to tell him. Well, why would I be sad about me seeing Nancy if I truly, truly believe that? Because personally, and this is my opinion, I don't think we do. I don't think any of us actually does. I think we just tell ourselves that to make us feel comfortable a little bit. But deep down inside, on an instinctual level, and I'm very precise about this, I think we already know. I think we already know this is the end and we'll never see this person again. And that's why we cry. That's why we mourn. But like I said, that's my opinion.
Kevin, like, it's been almost an hour now, and I just want to ask you one last question. And okay. So being an atheist that you are, and that you have an awesome show, The Left at the Valley.
Oh, you've got it.
And please,
I'll send you that.
yeah, and please, plug after.
Yes, of course.
The last question is, being that host, what good message or like what good difference should people make in this world? To make it the best place possible.
Okay. Boy, that's a good question. I will tell you one thing. I won't go into something philosophical or specific, but I will tell you what the show has changed in my life, and hopefully that will inspire people to do the same in their life. Like I said, I've always been the kind of guy who wanted to help the world, right? And even my mother used to say that Kevin wants to save the world all the time. And that show, becoming an atheist, um, and doing that show has opened incredible doors for me. I've uh, I've met intellectual giants. I've interviewed legends, and it never, ever, ever would have happened had it not been for that little podcast. I've discovered a whole slew of friends, mostly virtual, that I've met like on Facebook and stuff like that. Some fantastic people with fantastic advice and caring and loving. And if not for that podcast, I never would have met these people. I never would have had tea with Richard Dawkins. I never would have interviewed James Randi, and all these great intellectual giants and characters, and it's enriched my life tenfold. And I'm really really grateful that I did that. And life begins outside your comfort zone. I had to go outside my comfort zone to do this little show, and it's opened incredible doors, including this conversation I'm having with you right now. Had I not done the show, we never would have had this conversation. We never would have met. I never would have had this fascinating discussion about my points of view on life and so many other things with you. And isn't that one of the biggest things about humanity, the exchange of ideas?
Yep.
So don't be afraid to go out there and just put yourself out. I know a lot of people go and do podcasts in the hope they'll become famous. Well, I know full well I'll never become famous. And it never was the point of it. The point was always to, if I can uplift the conversation and I can help others rise as well. Rising tides lifts all ships. If I can help raise the water, then we can all float a bit higher, us, not just atheists, but humanity as a whole. We can all start conversing better. We can start reviving the art of conversation. We can actually start debating good points instead of wasting our time in front of television listening to Donald Trump. So I have to put that in there. So I think you need not to be afraid to go out there and start conversing. Be polite as much as you can, And I know sometimes some topics get really really testy, and sometimes you just want to. Urgh! But the spoken word is probably one of the greatest inventions that we ever had as a species. And we live in an era today where technology makes it easy for us to isolate each other. Maybe you should do the other way. Use that technology to use the spoken word and to converse with other primates on the planet, and listen to their stories. And you'll find out that their stories is not that much different than yours. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, and Kevin, anything you can plug?
Yeah, sure. If you guys like the kind of intellectual debacle that we just had there, right, it's called Left in the Valley. You used to be able to do it at leftinthevalley.com, but the show's the link's been debunked, so don't go there. It kind of sends you to a sex show now or something. I'm not even sure what it is. I'll have to revive that. But you can find us on Blog Talk, Stitcher, Spreaker, YouTube, all the places where they play podcasts. You can find us Left in the Valley.
Yeah, and Kevin, thank you so much for being on my podcast. It was great talking to you, bro. So that's the end of it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. This is your host, Elmo Ador Jr. And thank you for listening in. And please subscribe. Please follow us on Facebook. Please follow this. Please. Thanks.
It used to be hard to find the exact auto parts you needed, and that meant spending a lot of time at swap meets. It's a different game now when you can order exactly what you need from eBay Motors. They have 122 million parts, so you can always find the right fitment. Spend less time searching and more time building with the eBay Motors app, or visit ebaymotors.com. Let's ride.
Holidays are here, and so is fashionable fitness. Gift yourself a Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 3 5G, a phone that folds in half to literally stand on its own. Pair it with the Galaxy Watch 4 for ultimate wellness and wow factor. Check health stats, flex personal records. Over 90 activities can be tracked, like biking, swimming, golfing, and more. Invest in yourself with tech made to crush goals. Holidays open up with Galaxy. Shop it all at Samsung.com. 5G connection and availability may vary. Check with carrier. Products sold separately.